And welcome back to another episode of Ronin's Den. Today we are going to be blind reacting to the Ben Riggs follow up to his Death of the Golden Age of TTRPGs. I've purposely not listened to this yet.
Neither have I. It is going to be a pure blind reaction. We are literally going to listen to him try to defend himself or maybe backpedal. I don't know. I haven't listened to it yet, but it would be cool if he backpedaled a little bit, but he doesn't strike me as the type that will, so we'll see.
I'm going for a double
And
down.
yeah.
I'm going to say he's going to double down.
Ooh.
I'm going for the
All
double
right.
down.
Beautiful. All right, I'm going to play it. Let me know if you can hear it.
And gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all genders, gifted woodland animals, ascended AI, ants wandering the streets of the Midwest, ice dragons, because in the Midwest it is very, very cold today.
The fuck is he on?
Pegasi, sphinxes, pharaohs.
I can't hear you now.
And of course,
You can't hear me at all?
Now I can. Now I can.
Not to mention
I wasn't talking.
Oh, okay.
The one, the only, Dr. Scott Bruner.
Good morning, gang. Good morning, Ben. Good morning, everyone.
How you doing, Scott? It's really cold in Wisconsin today, so hopefully wherever you are, you're warm and avoiding tornadoes.
All right, number one. He's from Wisconsin, so that tells me all I need to know about his take. No offense to Wisconsin people, but yeah, Wisconsin.
Yeah, I just mentioned to you I recorded my tiny little office, which is actually not directly connected to the house. It's like a little addition that somebody built, and so I have my space heater blasting, and I'm slowly thawing in this room.
Oh.
Yeah, it is cold outside.
So, since last we talked,
did anything happen, Ben, since last time we talked?
I went viral, and apparently the internet thinks.
Oh,
I'm
yes,
wrong.
you did.
Yes, you are wrong.
Is the short version of events. A couple weeks. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was gonna say, as mediums go, having the internet think you're wrong is, it's not too bad. They think everything's wrong.
That's true.
It's a very
Double down.
It is
So, all right, we're starting out the response to, hey, the internet thinks everyone's wrong, so we shouldn't take that seriously. Like, what?
Yeah. Yep.
Like,
so they're doubling down.
All right, let's keep listening.
I'm sorry, internet. That's, of course, the irony is this is being broadcast on the internet at some point. But yeah, it's been a week. Ben, how are you doing?
So, last I checked, we were at over 600,000 views on Twitter. If you Google my name on YouTube now, you get a long list of videos being like, "This guy is wrong."
Yeah,
Oh,
nobody
yeah.
expected this heel turn from you, Ben.
I know. Well,
I didn't even know who
this
the hell
au-
you
it's
were
interesting
before
with
this.
Audience, one of the
I
things
didn't
I've
either.
seen a lot is, oh, this guy is, like, he's just, what is it? He's trying to be controversial and, sell books. And I am trying to sell books. But one of the interesting things for this audience is, you heard me come up with this idea on air. I forget if it was last week or the week before, but it was when we were talking about the MCDM RPG that it just kind of occurred to me that I'm like, oh, I can see how all of, like, again, my theory basically is the two things that caused this golden age that we've been living in for the past decade or so were the rise of streaming, which brought people to D&D, having a really good 5th edition that people could enjoy, and 5th edition is then a gateway to all these other games. First,
So, I don't disagree with that statement. I'm gonna say that right now. Like, with the rise of, like, Stranger Things, Critical Role, bringing people into 5th edition D&D is a very good gateway to other TTRPGs. I don't know how he can conflate that to meaning the Golden Age is dead, but I do agree with that statement. I'll give him that. I'll give him credit there.
Well, that's because he just worships at the altar of Wizards of the Coast. To him, the golden age of TTRPGs is the golden age of D&D. And losing market share or losing players, that is the end of his golden age. That's what I got out of the original article.
Yeah, and well, And then my question here would be, what does MCDM's new TTRPG have to do with any of that? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe
Well,
he'll
you
go
wanna know what it
further
has?
into it, but
You know what it has to do with it? He's afraid it's going to leech a lot of players out of D&D. And it
well,
will.
it's gonna pull at least 20,000.
Yeah. And
'Cause that's how many backed it.
right? And that's his thing.
But
It's like your competitors coming up with a new product, so you got to shit talk it so nobody wants to go buy it. Don't eat that restaurant there. They got rats. Nobody's ever even opened it yet, but I mean, sure, whatever.
yeah,
The
but
guys,
all right,
yeah.
keep playing.
Let's go back.
You know,
Yep.
other fantasy games, maybe the OSR, but beyond that, you know, Free League, Call of Cthulhu, right down to Kids on Bikes and
Okay, Call of Cthulhu came out in 1981.
Yeah.
The golden age that he's thinking right now had nothing to do with Call of Cthulhu. Right now, we're gonna fact check that one because 1981 is when the first edition of Call of Cthulhu came out.
Cthulhu.
We're on the 7th edition of Call of Cthulhu, ladies and gentlemen. There are more editions of Call of Cthulhu than Dungeons and Dragons. So I'm questioning his historianness right now. Back to
I
play.
am using the internet to find the
Remember
exact
name of the
date.
game you play by text.
Yeah, 1981.
What I was thinking of Alice is Missing, but I don't.
I think
that's what
it
you're
is Alice is Missing.
thinking of. Yeah. Okay.
Alice is Missing and Dread to throw out some
Sure.
amazing indie games. And again, I just saw, like because of the OGL crisis and companies moving away from 5th edition and making their own games, that's splintering the D&D community. Furthermore, some of the big drivers of people coming to D&D, things like, Matt Colville's YouTube channel, Critical Role, they're also moving away from D&D. And again, somebody corrected me, Critical Role is not giving up D&D, but they are creating their own games. So again, I assume that they'll still be covering less D&D content. I will tell you though that that gives me some pause in my proclamations. Maybe I would have toned things down a little bit if I'd known that Critical Role is going to keep doing D&D stuff.
So he's basing the whole thing off of Critical Role not doing D&D anymore?
This is what I don't like about Critical Role, man. It's like
What?
everybody thinks Critical Role is D&D. It's not. It's one show. It's one show.
I'm gonna piss a lot of people off here with what I'm about to say. Critical Role is to Dungeons and Dragons what porn is to sex. It is
I would have said Olive Garden
over-
is to Italian food, but I mean,
okay, yeah. Basically, it sets really, really high expectations that the normal person could probably never meet. So, whatever.
yeah.
That
That's
was
why
really
I
the
hate-
core idea, and I cited TSR and their proliferation of tabletop worlds in the 80s and 90s as an example to show how fragmentation leads to decreased sales. Yeah,
I'm gonna get
So I have a
your
problem with
opinion on
that.
duality.
Yeah, so I have a problem with that one. And I don't remember like the historic sales numbers, but they were going down. But I mean, like all kinds of nerd shit was going down at that point in time. Like the 90s, people think was like the golden age of comic books. Like comic books were going in the toilet in the 90s, if I remember right. Like they were busting. So was tabletop games. Like there were a lot of different ones. But
So-
all I saw with all these different world settings that came out was it kind of segmented that D&D off. So you had your fans of Dragonlance, you had your diehard fans of Dark Sun, of Forgotten Realms, of Spelljammer, and they played those settings like exclusively. It's almost like how people only play D&D now. It would be like people only play Spelljammer, only play Planescape, or only Ravenloft.
But he's using that as like an example of how that's gonna fragment
No,
the group, like the group now, and I don't see how
No.
that conflates.
No, it doesn't, because it had the same amount of people playing. They were just playing different settings. So you may have a hard time finding a Dark Sun group if that's what you really want to play, but you would still have the same chance to find any D&D group if you were open to choosing any setting.
Okay.
It didn't
Because I
fragment
know,
the
like-
community that badly.
Well, I think part of the problem with TSR when they were releasing all these different setting books is they put out way too many books. Like, it wasn't because they were putting out all these different settings. When you're producing like 40, 50 books in a year,
That was the problem.
no one's going to buy that
span.
many books.
Yeah. They were releasing them so quickly, and that was the issue.
Yeah, it
But
had
I'll
nothing
die
to
on
do
this
with the
hill.
fragmentation.
Yeah. And I'll die on this hill. Even the shittiest TSR book gave you more to work with than the best WotC book recently.
I will definitely agree with that. Might have had more problematic material in it, but it was definitely packed full of information. All right, let's get back to this Jagoff.
Yeah.
Like the beginning of the tweet was viewed 600,000 times. The last tweet was read 15,000 times. That said, that 15,000 makes it perhaps still the best read thing I've ever generated.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be proud of that, though.
I think you should, I think you should really lead into the Andy Kaufman role. I mentioned taking a heel turn. You know the comedian Andy Kaufman,
Of course.
who from Taxi, and it would become infamous for going to the Deep South and becoming a professional wrestler, but only wrestling women, and doing everything he could to become. What is the intergender professional wrestling champion?
This guy's he's skirting a point here.
Certainly
He's in
the
the
internet,
danger zone.
people come ready to be riled up on this particular issue.
Well,
and I think it's
I'm sorry. I know I've been talking, but let me say one thing on that note, which is, again, I certainly didn't expect this response. If you read my piece, I would have described it as funerary. I'm like, well, this sucks, guys and girls. Like, this seems bad. And again, like,
Does he not know the D&D community? Like, any negative statement about D&D is met with hellfire. Like, how dare you say something about D&D? Nuke 'em!
Like, how could he not know this was gonna go bad? How could you? Like, you can say the most wonderful things and still get this kind of hate. Like, I had a person. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go on. I'll do mine second.
I had a person the other day when I pointed out that the D10 with the 0 on it isn't a real D10. A real D10 has a 10 written on it. And someone called me a gatekeeping bastard because I was telling people that their D10 wasn't real. Like, it's not real. It's not a real D10. It
You have a
is the ones
percentile.
place of the percentile.
Yeah.
But because we don't want to print an 8th dice, we just say the 0 is a 10, not the 10 is a 0. And that's the confusion. But I got called all sorts of names for saying the truth.
Yep, because when you go to the store and you buy your dice, you're typically buying a generic set with a percentile. You have to buy D10s specifically. You have to be like, I want a 10-sided dice. And when they hand you the other one, no, that's a percentile. They're different. They are. Yeah. I remember. You remember the one where I said, yeah, I was gonna say, you remember the one where I was like, you could play D&D wrong, rules as written, and still have an amazingly fun time, and that's okay. And I had so many people jumping down my throat about how I was this gatekeeping, evil GM versus player mentality person, because I said you could play rules as written incorrectly and still have an amazingly fun time doing it. Like, D&D community, like, come on. Anything is going to be just met with... yeah.
And I know 7th Mastery gets mad when I say this, but if my only experience with D&D was the D&D internet community, I would never play D&D.
Mm-mm.
But yeah, okay, let's go back
I don't
to
play
him,
D&D
see what
now because of
Maury
the
has-
internet community.
Well, let's see what Maury has to say.
So if it
All
does
right.
well, it gets like 15.
We're 6 minutes into a 54-minute podcast.
Dear God. All right, we're going to let him talk for a little bit.
1,000 looks usually. I was certainly, I thought it'd get that. I didn't think that it would get anything more than that. I certainly didn't expect this to happen, where Bob World Builder and Professor Dungeon Master are talking about it, and Matt Colville is blocking me on Twitter.
Matt Colville blocked him.
So anyway, I just wanted to throw that one thing out there, which is
Now I want to see what he said about
because, again,
MCDM's RPG.
when people are like, "Oh, just bomb throwing for attention," I'm like, well, if I knew that I was going to get this much attention, I would have done this the week my book came out in hardcover, or the week my book came out in paperback, or before Christmas at least. Not
Oh, and tanked your
the
sales?
week after Christmas when professionals are still hungover.
Right.
But okay, I interrupted
Ooh.
you. I think I don't need to say anything else. I think you have some. I laid out.
This
my
sounds like doubling
concept
down.
And re-explained it, and I think that you have some things to say and some questions.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly, like as I mentioned, we talked about this previously, but I think one of the things that I think is interesting around the consequences of kind of that post really display how important tabletop role-playing games are to people. And I find that, and we've discussed that a lot on this show. There's something around. There's a reason why I've written so much around tabletop role-playing games, and why I find myself, even after completing a dissertation on this topic, still coming back to it. My favorite reads. I'm in the middle of Game Wizards. I've read your book a number of times at this point. Like, it's always fascinating because there's something I think about the tabletop role-playing game hobby, and I think there's something around the medium itself that really. I often use the term intimate describing tabletop role-playing games, especially because when you sit down at a table, you literally are joining in a consensual collaboration to make a reality. And I think that it in some ways it's very vulnerable, in other ways it's extremely empowering. Which is those two things together, I think, are really interesting. But we've mentioned tabletop role-playing games again. I keep getting back to wanting to write an article around the concept that rules, mechanisms, and again, talk about sometimes folks get a little upset. Whenever I take aim at saying, oh, the rules and mechanics don't matter, it's always, and I do think that they matter. I think that they do set some type of foundation up for what type of game is going to be played or what the expectations are. I mean, it's nothing more than, in some ways, a contract between players.
Okay.
These are
If the rules don't matter
for the reality that we're going to create
at all, why do there have to be different games? If your rules essentially are an index card that says roll dice or don't, play pretend with your friends and do whatever the fuck you want whenever you want, because that's basically what saying the rule system doesn't matter means. One, how do you sleep at night charging people for that product? Two, why the hell would you buy that product and then claim membership to that club like it's some honor? And why do we have different games if that's the case? At all. Like, the rules are so important to every single game. Like, the rules as written and intended to be played by is the most important factor when I'm looking at even picking up a game.
And, like, I've said it before, and someone kind of got mad at me, but if I agree to come to your table and play Dungeons and Dragons, there is a base assumption of what the bare minimum of Dungeons and Dragons is.
Yes.
So when you tell me Dungeons and Dragons, I come and this is what I expect. I expect that we're going to use the D20. I expect we're going to have classes and races. I expect that we're going to be using the rule set of Dungeons and Dragons, right? Or at least 99%, maybe 95% of the rules, right? That's my assumption. If I come to your table after you say, hey, we're going to play D&D, and you tell me, oh, we're not using the D20, we're using this, we roll a D6, even numbers succeed, odd numbers fail. There's no classes, you can pick any ability you want for the level that you're at. Oh, or maybe we're not even going to use levels. Okay, you lied to me. This isn't D&D. But if you say it's not D&D, they get mad at you. So
That sounds like it could be a
You
really
get what
fun
I'm
game
saying?
too. You know, and
it could be
it
a
could
really
be.
great game. But don't lie to me. It's
Right.
not D&D.
Don't tell me I'm going to have a cheeseburger when I come over your house and then throw a taco in front of me and be like, here you go. Like, I like tacos.
Yeah.
I'm going to eat the taco, but I came expecting a burger.
All right, let's listen to what else these guys have to say. He just rambled for 2.5 minutes and said nothing.
Yep.
So, revolution. I don't. What's the word I'm looking for? So fascinating, and compelling about tabletop role playing games, and the thing that I think is most important, is most interesting around them, is just that they give us permission to make these realities, but they give us permission to become childlike in our capacity for wonder and imagination. And as an academic, saying those things sound almost kind of specious. It's something that I don't want to say, because like, what does that mean? What does wonder, imagination? What does fun? What does creativity mean? At the same time, we have really vested. Real vested memories and
Grab that thesaurus, buddy.
moments of just kind of joy
Keep firing
and
them out.
creativity that in many ways get lost when the parameters and the limitations of our regular and professional lives and growing up and all of those things make us, I don't think, ever get rid of, in some ways forget. So I think in many ways tabletop role-playing games is a return to the potential creative capacity of childhood in many ways, before those limitations and boundaries bound us to responsibilities and ways.
Oh yeah, this guy took every psych class under the sun.
I don't
know who this guy is, but apparently
know.
like he's
The-
some
the-
sort of
the
psychiatrist
boundaries
or
of
something,
adulthood,
psychologist.
sometimes restrict us from.
His
So
name is
I do think that
Dr.
people
Scott. I don't know who the
people
fuck
don't
he is,
like
but
it
he is
when-
way too
When
we
what's
see
got
Jargony.
Well,
jargony, yeah.
I mean, we talked about this the other day, which is, when people attacked. That's not the right word. When more high-level criticism became to get into the video game field, the backlash to that was often ugly and absurd. But coming from that's the problem, is when people don't think, or when people lead with their emotions. We have situations where people become viral, and we have, name your. I'm not gonna pick on any specific internet channels, but these channels are ripe for that kind of outrage. And when people feel like the things that are so important to them are being criticized, they do get upset. Now, in this case, you're not taking aim at tabletop role-playing games, but you have basically made the case that.
How are you not?
Is interesting is, I think one of the things that people miss from your article is that you are, and of course everybody thinks now, as we've joked a lot, is that you're this enormous 5e Dungeons and Dragons fan, which both you and I find kind of funny, because if I'm not aware, you don't even run Dungeons and Dragons. Is that correct, Ben?
I mean, I have run it, and I do run it on occasion.
Yeah.
But again, like, I ran 3.5 last year because I was like, well, I'm going to be writing what 3.5. I better run some 3.5. I'll run 4th for the exact same reason. I think 5th is good. I mean, I think it's a good version of D&D, maybe the best version since Basic. And again, the quality of 5e is one of the things that I think is responsible for the golden age of role-playing that we've been living through, because all these people driven to D&D by media found a good game waiting for them there that is, again, the best maybe it's been in 40 years. But no, I think that one of my strengths is that I am not primarily a D&D guy.
Right.
No.
What?
I have no idea, but he's saying that 5th edition is the best edition within 40 years since like the Basic set. Now the Basic was awesome. I loved Basic. That's that is all opinion based. No, there is no objective way to say which edition of D&D is the best, unless you're talking about what each edition does well specifically.
Like,
there's no best edition. There's editions that handle some things best, like 3 and 3.5 are amazing at character crafting, even though it gets a little nonsensical sometimes. And 4th edition is amazing for tactical combat. Second's one of the better freeforms. Yeah, second's a lot better to give the GM and the players honestly more flexibility in more areas, and then better defined roles in areas that are lacking when it comes to 5th edition. And 5th is just a bloated combat simulator played on a grid map.
Like,
It's
thing is,
okay.
I like 5th edition. I don't. I wouldn't say it's better than 4th. I was a big fan of 4th. I think it's better than 3.5 and 3E because I didn't care for 3.5 or 3E. Like,
didn't
when
the
I
setup.
played it, I loved it. But when I moved to 4th edition and then to 5th edition, like, I will never go back to 3.5. I'll never go back to 3E or 3.5.
Mm-mm.
2nd edition, I've never really played, so I can't speak on.
I'll run
But
it for
I know
you.
Thaco was like,
Super simple.
everybody tells me that, but then they start doing the math equation. I'm like, huh?
What's 10 minus 5?
But 5.
There you go. You figured out your 2-hit number.
Oh, beautiful. But yeah, so like, I don't know what, like, I don't even know what these two are saying. Is kind of the problem right now. They're
doing
using a
this-
bunch of big words and
Yes.
acting like they're smart.
Well, and that's the thing. They're not even finishing. They're just saying a bunch of big words to lead into something, and then they're going back and using more big words to go back to where they're just keep going back and forth. Like they never get to the point. And right as soon as you get to the point where they should get to the point, they go back and restate what they were saying with different words.
Let's keep listening. I don't know how long I can handle these two, but we're gonna
The
try.
thing that cracks me up is my people are essentially the ones that are coming after me. The indie
Your
weird
people.
folk that are, making games out of toothpicks.
Okay,
Just
my people, the indie weird folk who are making games out of toothpicks. You're insulting them, but they're your people. Like, whatever.
And I also want to say, just to be clear, I have zero problem with people disagreeing with me. I think it's really interesting. I like to hear counter arguments. I know I've gotten a lot of just straight up rude hate, and that has caused me to kind of flee from social media. But I want to be clear. I am. The world would be a grayer and less interesting place if everyone agreed with me, and I kind of posted it. Like I showed it to some people before I posted it. No one agreed with me. I had it edited, which because again, I typically have long social media.
You
posts
showed it to
edited.
people before you posted it, and they all told you they disagreed.
So, yeah, I just wasn't. I wasn't expecting the level of hate that I got, and but again, people on the internet complaining about mean people on the internet is fundamentally boring. But again, I do want to be clear. You can disagree with me. I have no problem with you disagree with me. I much less like it if you call me names.
Yeah, the problem is that folks on the internet aren't just folks on the internet. Other people on the internet. It's just 500,000 AI bots that are obsessed. Is the people mostly don't get the argument
that
you're making,
was
right?
fucking low.
and,
Well, I want to add
all the
again, based on
critics
the
are
numbers,
just
the
bots.
vast majority of people did.
You kind of lose all credibility right
Yep.
there.
That's
And
it.
you're like the 500,000 people who didn't like it were just bots.
Uh-huh.
So no one can disagree with you unless they're bots. Like,
Come on.
whatever.
The whole thing, and at some point I think they were just like, I'm having an emotion, so I'm going to stop reading.
I read the whole thing.
I will say it wasn't until
Me too.
things started to go crazy, and I really reflected on things that I was like, I guess I do say in this piece everyone is doing it wrong. In fairness to the strength of the reaction, because for the past year, we have switched from a cooperative model in many ways to a competitive model. And that's new to the role-playing game industry. And as happens in competitive models, everyone does what is best for them, which in this case is we can't trust Wizards of the Coast anymore, so we need to make our own game because that's what's best for us, which is totally logical and makes a ton of sense. But if you look at it, from
Say why it's
industry-wide,
logical.
I think that is a net negative. Good.
Well, I don't.
Did he not think that everybody was already doing that?
No, that's what he was saying. The
Like,
reason why they're doing it is because, they need to separate from Wizards. Well, I mean, let's look at Wizards in 2023, right? The racist monkey people that were in Spelljammer. Okay? The OGL, which we all know was just them testing the water to see where they could go, pull back just enough to get people happy, and then try again later. Like
yeah.
that
Well, no, but
Um,
like what he's basically saying is that everybody this whole time has been doing it cooperatively, like
yeah,
for the betterment of the community.
for the betterment
Like
of
they're not
D&D.
doing it, yeah, but they've always been doing it to make money. Like very few companies are making D&D content not to make money. And then when the OGL came out, it was Wizards of the Coast saying, yeah, we don't care about you. We don't want you to make money. So they had to go, well, we're no longer going to be guaranteed to make money off the back of Wizards of the Coast. We got to do something different. It has never been cooperative. It
No.
has always been competitive.
And
These are things that Wizards of the Coast is not doing. We'll do them and we will profit.
yeah, and a lot of those things that Wizards wasn't doing were just basic, I don't know how to say it other than common decency and humanity. Like, don't put racist tropes in your books. Don't threaten people's livelihoods. Don't sick the fucking Pinkertons on somebody because you ship shit early. Don't use AIR and lie about it twice. Like, everything they've done
And
along the
then,
way was breaking the, and this is for years, has been breaking the trust. Oh, there's a lot of people in the community that have Stockholm syndrome and don't care, but there's enough people going, all right, yeah, this just doesn't look good for me, my personal
yeah.
optics. So I got to do what's good for me. So yeah, Wizards and D&D brought this on themselves.
Yeah.
The tabletop role-playing game industry in 1975 switched. I think I have 2 points to it. And I think that's a really interesting thing to kind of jump off of. But it's interesting to me. I'm in the middle of Game Wizards right now, and I wish I could be about the excellent Game Wizards by John Peterson, of course, who writes a lot around the early history of Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know why I'm saying that. If there's anybody in the audience who knows who John Peterson is, I would be surprised. But if you don't, you're
Wait,
welcome.
I'm sorry. What was the question again?
I didn't get to a question yet, but what I wanted to say is you had mentioned that we're moving from a cooperative model of tabletop role-playing games to one that's competitive, and one of the things about Game Wizards is it points out that as soon as TSR kind of became incorporated, Gary Gygax had to shift his thinking into. As a matter of fact, the section I had just read was about when M.A. Barker had released Empire of the Petal Throne, and which the rules are basically completely lifted from the first editions of Dungeons and Dragons, and how kind of upset Gary Gygax was that Barker had never reached out to TSR and said, I'm doing this thing, and making the point that even in 1975, Gary Gygax had switched from a system of Dungeons and Dragons was just something that was being shared in a lot of these kind of forums to this was something that his partners, the Blooms, Don Kay, and those people actually were beginning to put actual stake of their futures into the life. That being said, what I think is interesting is because you just mentioned 3.0 a little bit before, and I think a lot of the decisions that Wizards of the Coast, the TSR, almost all the decisions they've made around Dungeons and Dragons since about 1975, 1976, is have always been based on how to grow it from the
Mention
specific
the
viewpoint
lawsuits.
of that company. What's in it for them, right? We do live in a capitalist society, which is entangled with a lot of the decisions that we make. But what I think is interesting is Dungeons and Dragons Third Edition, even though it was proceeding from how do we make this popular, how do we get people playing this game, did introduce the OGL, which is a strange little system. One that Gary Gygax, till his final days, I think never even agreed with or understood. This concept that bringing, and your article in many ways is more about the OGL than necessarily, and its entanglement with this golden age of RPGs. 3.0 brought us this OGL, which said anybody can, make rule systems, modules, campaigns, mods basically for Dungeons and Dragons as, using that rule set. And I think there's something to be said for the fact that that was an introduction of what's good for the community might be good for us as well. And what
So they could sell more
I don't
Dungeons
know.
and Dragons
What
and make
we
money.
certainly would have.
Repeat what you just said.
It was so they could sell more Dungeons and Dragons and make money. It wasn't for some good of the community. People were homebrewing shit
Look-
forever and will continue to homebrew shit forever. Like,
I was just thinking the same thing. They did not create the OGL to make it so other people could create stuff and profit. They made it so more eyes would be on their product.
yeah, and they got a kickback
They
too
will
on there.
sell more. Yeah.
And I really like Gary Gygax. Like, I'm from that era, but TSR and early Wizards, and there probably still are, but they were litigious as fuck. Like, they were always involved in some kind of freaking lawsuit against people that were, using D&D or something that they said was a trademark. It was a constant stream of lawsuits.
Well, yeah, because it was never about the community. It's always been about
Exactly.
money.
Yep.
Like, I don't know why there's such this revisionist history that the game was about community and together. No. Gary
Initially,
Gygax wanted to make money. He
Yeah.
wanted
Well,
to make money.
it got to that point. Initially, yes, it was about all the community and having fun, and then he figured out, just like anybody else could, you can make money doing it. And when it got to be a big business, that's when capitalism. Anyway, let's continue.
Yeah.
Hasbro is doing is kind of introducing some reservations to that system as they try to take control of where Dungeons and Dragons is gone. Is that correct? I mean, I'm in many ways I'm thinking out loud, but your concept of this idea that we're moving away from capitalist structures or motivations behind game companies, that we're moving back to that. I don't know if that's historically true, because I think at the same time, I do think that the OGL really, in many ways, it's what talk about rules and mechanical systems. Like, here was a rule and a mechanical system for how to approach Dungeons and Dragons that, even if it was originally introduced,
He never
for
made a point.
selfish reasons to grow Dungeons
He
and
talked
Dragons,
for a minute and a half
literally did
about the
make a
OGL and never made a
foundation, or at least
point.
a concept
Not
of
one
walking
point.
through role-playing games, that this is owned by everyone.
Yeah. So one thing I want to throw out here, I wrote a post maybe a month ago, which was stating that I am pessimistic about an OGL for 6th edition.
Right.
Now, last year,
You may want to clear. I may pause you on that. You might want one of the things, obviously, people online took a lot of umbrage with is you referring to it as 6th edition. And I don't want to interrupt your thought, but I do think if we're going to continue to call it, you should explain why.
I mean,
why you were
I just think 6th edition is the clearest designation for it, because if you're right, like, I can call it the D&D rules that will be coming out in spring of 2024.
This is a lot more fun if you picture this guy as Kermit the Frog.
What?
There we go.
Picture this guy as Kermit the Frog.
Like,
Whatever.
again,
Whatever.
it's just like one D&D was fine. 6th edition was fine.
Mhm.
It doesn't seem like Wizards knows what they're calling it yet.
Right.
Or at least they don't have a brand for it. Because when I've looked, it's like the upcoming rules, the rule books coming out next spring, is how people are referring to it. Which, as you get lengthier, becomes really unwieldy. So again, I'm shocked that people are like, like, of all the things to dig in on, that's a really weird one for me. But okay,
I'll agree with him on that.
5.666 edition.
Well, Yeah, I'm not that surprised because again, it goes back to the sensitivity I think people have around not just tabletop role playing games, but around fifth edition. And I do think it's funny. We talked a little bit around people are proceeding. The folks, especially the ones that took the highest level on bridge, are proceeding from places of emotion, and I think that's understandable because again, we all have such a vested emotional interest in tabletop role playing games. And I think there's something to be said for fifth edition has been a home for a lot of folks in many ways. One of the reasons I think fifth edition was so successful is because it did. That's a great metaphor, quite frankly, that it did bring people home. And I guess they don't want to be kicked out of the house again, right? And even the nomenclature of sixth edition, I do think that people are reading into that if sixth edition is, some of the changes to these editions have been radical. I would say that not all of them, but certainly the change from third to fourth and fourth to fifth were two kind of fairly radical changes. And I think people.
I'm going to call it revised fifth and just call it R5 from now on. That is easy. It's clear. And as long as you say it's revised fifth,
right.
There we go. And for internet purposes, I think that speeds things up. Go ahead and finish your thought, but then I have like three thoughts going.
Yeah, well, I do want to. I do want to hit it.
Are any of them going to have a point?
3 thoughts. You're never going to have a point.
I think it's interesting. I think R5 sounds good. Although I have to admit, I do quite like the 5.666 idea as well.
Me too.
But we have no. Of course, and the last thing I'll say, that I will hand it back to you. You're making predictions in the article as well, right? None of us really know exactly what's going to happen in the next
Nothing's going to happen.
So we can only kind of chart the course. And I think in many ways, what's useful about predictions is because we're interested. You and I are both kind of storytellers and come as writers and kind of build narratives onto kind of.
I would never want to sit through one of your games.
But it will, it's just going to be
imagine a meandering description of a tavern.
This all speaks to how all of us have so much vested interest in what is going to happen across
There's a chicken down the road.
Year. Nobody really knows, but it's going to be really, really, really interesting. Anyway, please.
So, I guess I would also briefly say, when I wrote this, I did think making predictions was both foolish and fun.
Right.
But I thought that the fun far outweighed the foolishness. I'm a historian saying what I think is going to happen in the future. But also, again, I am, without hyperbole, I am the resource for Silver Age TSR. The Lorraine Williams era is my era, and I see a lot of similarities between where we're going and what happened then, which is why I'm like, okay, I'm going to write this. And so that's the serious part where I'm like, hey, this is what I really think. I see these similarities, and if you have a fracturing of the community and a decrease in people being brought to D&D, I think it turns out bad for everyone. So it is my legitimate honest opinion. But I was also like, let's...
So here's what I don't understand about that. How is it bad for everyone? Let's say you got 100,000 people that do a thing. 100,000 people continue doing that thing, but they just do it in 4 different areas of the same thing. So now there's 4 brands instead of 1. It only affects D&D. It's not affecting the community. Yeah. It's only affecting one mega corporation's bottom line. There are going to be even more people coming into the hobby as a whole. Are they all going to be playing games that we like and we agree with? No. We're all going to like different games and different rule styles, but there's going to be overall more people in quantity in this hobby moving forward.
And then the other thing is, like, Matt Colville has such a following. His game is only going to bring more people because those 20,000 that backed it are going to be promoting it and pushing it. And with a guy like that makes the videos like he does, it's going to bring more people. Whatever game Critical Role plays is going to bring people in because they are entertaining. Mm-hmm. They are professional voice actors. Whatever they play is going to bring people in. Like, nothing is changing except the D&D superiority.
Yep. And they're still going to be the biggest one. But that's the other thing. They're still going to be the biggest. They're still going to have the most support, the most items for their game. That's going to be the baseline still. Instead of 5 million people playing, there's going to be 4.9 million people playing. Like, it's the same. Like, nothing's changing. Nothing.
And that's like the thing I don't think he's getting.
No.
Is nobody's arguing the fact that nobody's arguing that there's a split in the community. But that doesn't mean there's not going to be a good player base. That doesn't mean the community's not going to stay strong.
No.
Like, he's doom and glooming, and
My game's is going to be the most popular still, but not as popular as it was last week. But I mean, we're still number one, just not as number one. I mean, that's what he sounds.
I don't know
like.
how much.
I don't know how much longer I can take
more
this
of these
guy.
I will give it
Let's give
another
it
couple
5
minutes, but
let's give it 5 more minutes.
Let's have a little fun, you know.
Right.
Like I'll even be foolish enough to be specific here, because again, you know, I was like, you know, everybody gets on the internet with their doom and gloom opinions. Well, okay, if I'm right, how do we prove I'm right? Here are the tools for proving I'm wrong as history goes on. You know, we can see. So anyway, you said predictions, and that was the first thing that came to mind. Second, OGL and revised 5th, or R5, as I'm going to call it from now on.
You said that earlier.
They said last year, Kyle Brink, or is it Brinks? Anyway, Kyle from What Wizards said that there would be an OGL for R5. If they are really doing a spring launch of R5, that OGL should be out already. They should have released it so that third-party publishers can have
I'll give him
things
that.
out
He's
for
not
the
wrong
launch
there.
of
He's not
R5.
wrong there.
You will
give
notice
him
they
that
have
one.
not released one, which to me says either A, maybe they're behind on the design of the R5 rules, which veterans tell me is unlikely. Well, veterans said that they will keep working on those rules until publication. So maybe they're not done with the rules, or the people that wanted to kill the OGL for 5e have gained ascendancy, and there won't be one for revised 5th edition. Again, I can't tell you which is more likely, and
I'm
I
leaning
don't
on
have
there
any
won't be
inside
one.
knowledge. This is total skepticism on my part, but I'm pessimistic about getting an OGL.
So
I'll give him that. And my theory. Oh, sorry, go on.
I'll give him that, but I don't know for sure. I'd have to relook it up. But they might not have released one because when the OGL Crisis came out, they did say that they were going to keep the current OGL and it was never going to change. I didn't believe them. And quite frankly, it probably is just going to be no OGL. But maybe they'll surprise me. Maybe.
Yeah, so
go with what you're
I don't
saying.
think I was going to say I don't think there's going to be an OGL. I think that they're going to capture everything for this new version of D&D because they're going for that proprietary virtual tabletop. They're talking about going to digital media. And if you don't have all of that under lock and key, you don't have cases against piracy. So I see it moving into more of a subscription-based model with no OGL, focusing on their apps and internet access being a requirement to use it. But that's
I guarantee there's going to be thousands of microtransactions.
They're already doing it on D&D Beyond. When Planescape was launched, pay an extra $10 to get 4 character frames, a set of dice, and some character portraits on a fucking website. Not even real tangible items. Like, come on. Like,
yeah.
Ugh.
And because it's digital media, they can literally say, take it away for any reason at any point. So if they go fully digital for 6e, whenever they decide, okay, it's run its course, we're not getting as many sales, 6e is just gone, erased, and they bring out 7th, and you have to repurchase everything, and you have no access to your 6th edition stuff because they got rid of it.
I'm glad you added that, because I was going to say, look at what PlayStation just did with all those people's movies. They just deleted them.
Exactly.
And I could definitely see Wizards pulling that shit.
So, all right. Back to these guys for a couple minutes.
And also, in some ways, even if there is an OGL for revised 5th, a lot of these companies are now so suspicious it doesn't seem like they want to use it. So
not wrong.
That's
there.
obvious. They're making their own games.
If there is an OGL for revised 5th, that that is one of the things that could destroy my prophecy. If we just recreate the current ecology using these new rules, I'm totally wrong, and everything's going to be fine. But so we'll see what happens. That would be one of the things that would really blow me out of the water very early on.
I think we can
What
end it
else?
there.
Good. Oh,
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I can't take any more of that guy. So
so-
that Dr. Scott talked more than Ben and said absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Can we agree on that?
Absolutely.
He kept talking and never made a singular point.
Well, when you're trying to sound really smart and you want to tell people about this thing that's going on, you have to go back to. So when I was in school studying basket weaving over in Massachusetts to put these things together for this concert I was going to, because I was taking a trumpet lesson, that is what this guy sounded like the whole time.
God,
I was like, dude, the point. How do we get to it? And yeah, Riggs doubled down.
Yeah, but I think hearing him talk, I don't think as negatively as I do from his article. I think the reason he believes what he believes is sound. Because he's worried, he's focused on D&D.
Mm-hmm.
Like we said before, it's the D&D empire that's falling a little bit.
Yeah,
it's not the TTRPG space.
Yeah, no. TTRPG space is just always going to get better from this point on, in my opinion. It's just I do see with D&D going down, this is what he's probably thinking, it's going to be harder to find a group. And yeah, when you have, let's say, 10,000 games and you have a small town and one person's you have two people that play Mouse Ritter, one person's playing brooms on kids on brooms, 10 people playing D&D. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of people that just can't find games nearby because they're playing a game that's not D&D, and it's not very popular. So they're gonna, things like Discord, Roll20, all those, you're gonna go there to find your games, and there's gonna be less people playing D&D, but it's still gonna be the most played game.
Yeah,
and by a huge margin.
Yeah, 100%.
I never really thought that negatively of him. I just thought he was an idiot and wrong on the golden age of TTRPGs. Yeah. Oh, wow. Camera just did a little messed up thing there. I am going to have to fix that.
I closed my live, so I'll put the live back up. Then our stuff will go back to normal.
Okay.
Technical difficulties, everybody.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to end this episode.
Yeah.
He doubled down, didn't really say anything, and we still disagree. I still disagree. I think you still disagree. But yeah. I do think it's hilarious that Matt Colville blocked him on Twitter.
Oh yeah, no, that's funny.
That's funny.
But
I'm getting an echo. You want to kill your live?
Oh shit. There we go. All right. Hey, I'm Dragon X. That's Duality Complex. This is Ronin's Den. If you are still watching, thank you. We appreciate you. Next week, we will be having our first of many monthly one-shots. We will be playing Legends of Kralis with 5 wonderful other players and Levi Davis, the creator, hilarious game master, running the game. Please check it out. It is going to be a fantastic time. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful evening.